Mark Regev is a senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He joins us. Good afternoon, Mr. Regev.
Good afternoon.
Presumably Israel wants this war over as quickly as the rest of the world. You must want your military back home and safe. Does today's announcement provide any hope that you are closer to the end of operations?
We're closer, maybe to paraphrase Churchill. It's not the end, but it could be maybe the beginning of the end. Northern Gaza, up until now, had a ferocious Hamas war machine that has now been substantially dismantled, but there is still work ahead of us, both in central and southern Gaza.
The Prime Minister, in his New Year message, spoke of the war possibly lasting months. It's a war that's seen a very high level of civilian casualties, and it's caused immense damage to the perception of Israel beyond your borders. Your friends, as well as your enemies, will want to know if there is any limit to the death and destruction Israel is prepared to wreak and stomach as it seeks out Hamas and the hostages.
Well, let's be frank and remember the basics. We didn't start this war. We didn't want this war. It was a war that was forced upon us. And this war could be over tomorrow. If Hamas accepted the advice of the Prime Minister, he said you can either surrender or we will defeat you and reach you in battle. And it's Hamas that has kept this war going. And that's been unfortunate for the people of Israel and for the people of Gaza. Both sides have experienced destruction, obviously. In Gaza, the destruction has been particularly massive because Hamas has embedded itself as a strategy underneath civilian infrastructure. And therefore, to reach Hamas, we've had to go into civilian neighborhoods, we've had to go into hospitals even and other humanitarian sites, precisely because Hamas has embedded itself inside these places. Of course, we've always, before going into battle, we urge civilians and we give them time to leave the area because we don't want to see them caught up in the crossfire.
You did not start this war, but equally, nor did the thousands of civilians who have been killed, the hundreds of thousands who are currently displaced and in utterly miserable and dangerous living conditions. Again, the question from friends as well as enemies is there a point at which you say this is impossible given the number of civilians who are being killed or put in danger's way?
The information I'm receiving is that the number of non-combatants being caught up in the crossfire is actually going down. And of course, we don't want to see civilian casualties. Our enemy is Hamas, not the population of Gaza. But having said that, the Hamas war machine has to be destroyed. If anyone thinks an immediate ceasefire, unconditional, is going to solve anything, it's an illusion. Any ceasefire that leaves Hamas in power just takes us all back to square one. We'll be fighting another Gaza war in 6 months or in a year. Hamas says so openly. It refuses to live in peace with my country. Hamas says openly that they would do the October 7th horrific massacres and rapes and burnings and beheadings. They'd do it all again if given the chance. They say so.
OK. You mentioned civilian combatants. We talked at the top of the programme, the beginning of the programme, of 2 Al Jazeera journalists who have been killed today in Khan Yunis. Israel is accused by a good few journalists on the ground of targeting Al Jazeera. In the past, you have promised inquiries into the circumstances around individual deaths. Of the 70 Palestinian journalists killed so far and 3 Lebanese, are you aware of any inquiry that has laid the blame at the IDF's door?
We've done such investigations in the past, and we have found when there is fault, we have found fault with our own forces. But let's be very clear. Israel does not deliberately target journalists. You know this. We are the only country in the Middle East that actually does have a free press. We're the only country in the entire region where the press can write bad things and criticize the leaders of government. That cannot happen, I don't think, in any other Middle Eastern country. And to say that Israel deliberately targets the press is ridiculous. We're the only country that actually enshrines a free press.
Mark Regev, we will leave it there. Thank you, as always, for coming on the programme.